Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to 2025. 2024 was quite the year. I became a co-owner of Hidden Trail Brewing here in Garden City, Kansas. I was selected as a representative of Kansas at the National Wildlife Federation National Conference in Washington, D.C. And Invasive Brews was accepted into the YouTube's partner program this past year. And I really want to thank everybody for your support. It really does mean a lot. And with that, I'm going to be bringing in 2025 and this video with an 8-point American IPA that my nephew in North Carolina brought me back for over the holidays, and it's from Devil's Backbone Brewing Company. So he got it on his way home this past Christmas and New Year's. So I'm going to crack that open, and we're going to get to some of the biggest stories of 2024 regarding invasive species. All right. Cheers, everybody. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right. Let's get into it. One of the bigger stories of 2024 in regards of invasive species was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service allocated $2.96 million in some efforts being done. This investment is from President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law and went to support of eradication of newly introduced or established invasive species. There were 6 total projects selected out of about 76 applicants, and these projects included about $450,000 going towards advancing island ecosystem restoration and research on Norway rat eradication on Great Sitka Island and Alaska's Maritime National Wildlife Refuge. Around $813,000 going to Argentine ant eradication on Santa Cruz Island in California. $134,000 for the eradication of 2 high-risk invasive plants in Hawaii. Over $600,000 for the eradication of the American bullfrog in Washington state, for the recovery of the federally listed Oregon spotted frog. Over $540,000 nationwide going to YY technology in invasive fish populations, which this technology will help destabilize those spreading populations. And around $423,000 for the eradication efforts of black rat on the Virgin Islands. All of these efforts are going to help all of our ecosystems and all of our economies nationwide. In the months of September and October, the East Coast was hammered by back-to-back devastating hurricanes, Hurricanes Helene and Milton. These 2 devastating storms caused an estimated $250 billion in damages and ended with around 270 people losing their lives. It was a horrible hit to America, and the impacts might not be over. The floodwaters and over 140 mile-an-hour winds most likely spread species to different areas, including already established invasive species. The United States Geological Service maps show that Hurricane Helene floodwaters had the potential to spread 222 non-native species all the way to Georgia, and 90 of those were shown to be already invasive. Hurricane Milton was similar, moving 114 non-native species, with 56 being invasive. These species include invasive aquatic plants, fish, and invertebrates. Some of the species of concern include the Asian swamp eel, blue catfish, and giant apple snail. Each one of these species have demonstrated major impacts on local food webs, ecosystem functions, and have agricultural and economic impacts. Other species that were most likely to be spread by these storms were alligator weed, which is an aquatic plant that clogs water intakes and can lead to stagnant waters, impacting water quality. And the Cuban tree frog, which prey on and compete with our native frog species and can secrete noxious chemicals that can be irritating to humans. So not only did we suffer the direct impacts of these storms, we're going to be suffering from indirect impacts for years to come. As if zebra and quagga mussels weren't already devastating enough, in October, a new mussel species was discovered at Rough and Ready Island near Stockton, California. It is the mussel's first confirmed appearance in North America, most likely introduced in a similar way as the zebra and quagga mussels, and that would be ballast tanks. Just like the previously mentioned zebra and quagga mussels, this golden mussel feeds in a similar way. They filter nutrients and plankton out of the water, and by this, they can have devastating impacts. Essentially, they filter out all the plankton and nutrients out from our native mussels and our native fishes, as well as clogging water intakes. Which is a huge concern because the Delta pumping stations send water to over 30 million people and millions of acres of farmland. Since it is a new introduction, there may be a chance for eradication efforts to succeed. But experts say if they don't, they will have massive impacts on the health of all the waters of the state, water conveyance systems, infrastructure, and water quality. The state of Virginia took a huge step in the fight against invasive species. They allocated $4.9 million over the next 2 years into different projects regarding invasive species. These projects are going to include over $1.8 million for the Department of Forestry to hire 2 staff members, over $1.5 million to the Department of Wildlife Resources to hire 2 more staff members, $970,000 to the Department of Agriculture to hire 1 staff member, and around $500,000 for the Department of Conservation and Recreation to hire 2 staff members. And all of these numbers do include all of the other expenses that it takes to kind of control all of these species. So if you're looking for a job fighting back against invasive species, it sounds like Virginia is the state to go. In Madison, Wisconsin this year, they had their very first Invasive Species Awareness Day. There were several events tied to this day, which included guided hikes, education programs, field work to remove invasive species, and even a 5K run, which I most likely would have walked. Visitors on this day learned the important techniques and skills for slowing the spread of invasive species and applying these practices to their homes and properties. Volunteers that attended the field workstations were encouraged to wear gloves, closed-toed shoes, long sleeves, and pants that obviously were going to get dirty. If we can convince other states to do stuff like this, we can spread the awareness of invasive species tenfold. So kind of get with your local governments, your city councils, maybe even your state senators, and let's all have an Invasive Species Awareness Day. In 2024, for the first time, researchers kind of looked and compared all 188 non-native species in the Great Lakes ecosystems, and they kind of compared their impacts. And they put together a list of the top 10 most invasive and impactful invasive species. Of course, at the top of the list are the 2 species we've already discussed in this video, the zebra and the quagga mussels. At number 3 is the alewife. 4, the sea lamprey. 5, Japanese stiltgrass. 6 is the grass carp.
780.
7, the water chestnut. 8 is common reed or Phragmites, which I did a video on a couple years ago in Cheyenne Bottoms, which if you want to learn about this invasive grass or this invasive reed, please check that out. And at number 9 is the round goby, which this past summer I went fishing for in Lake Michigan and did a couple videos on it, so be sure to check that video out as well. And at number 10 is the white perch, yet another invasive fish. I want to end this video on some really good news, and it doesn't really particularly correlate with invasive species, but it was a huge win for conservation as a whole. In September, for the first time since 1918, An astonishing 420 miles of salmon habitat was reconnected in California and Oregon on the Klamath River watershed. This is to date the world's largest dam removal project in history. The Klamath River once produced the third largest salmon run in the lower 48 states. However, the dam was built between 1918 and 1966, blocking this migration, affecting the tribes, affecting the ecosystem, affecting the recreation and the commercial fisheries. So this had a huge impact that, we didn't really think about when we put this dam in. In the year 2002, an estimated 30 to 70,000 fish perished below these dams. So that is a huge impact on this population. And this is what sparked the Yurok tribe to launch an investigation, and together with other tribes, called for the removal of the dams. There's even more good news for the Klamath salmon and steelhead. The NOAA's Office of Habitat Conservation recommends an $18 million award going to the Yurok tribe to help reconnect and restore all of these cold water tributaries and salmon habitat and trout habitat and all of these ecosystems. So that is a huge win. Now I know I could have added things like the Joro spider, the giant venomous flying spider coming to a neighborhood near you. But I already debunked some of those kind of myths about the Joro spider in an earlier video. But I just wanted to take a second to, again, thank everybody for your support. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I bring awareness to invasive species wherever I go. I want to, again, plug Devil's Backbone Brewing again. This is a really good IPA, 8-point American IPA. So if you see this in a store near you, and you like IPAs, I highly recommend it. If you're ever in Garden City, be sure to stop by Hidden Trail Brewing. I'll most likely be working there. But again, thank you everybody for the support, for the kind words, the messages, the questions I'm being asked online about invasive species. You're giving me ideas for other content that I could do. So be sure to subscribe and like this video if you haven't already. That really means a lot. But until next time, plant native and drink local.